Welcome back, Erickson audience. Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of the Erickson African American Alliance podcast, Being Black in the Tech Telecom Space. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly encourage you to go back and take a look at that, because part 2, we dive deeper into the conversation of being black in the tech telecom space. So stay tuned and enjoy the conclusion of this Erickson African American Alliance podcast. Thank you. It's coming from my background as far as, being in the video production industry and things of that nature. I was oftentimes one of one. So I think we have all had that, experience of being that one black person within the whole entire group. And it's hard because you want to see us represented. You want to see us out there getting these opportunities. And I think there are obviously opportunities to be had. And I think we just have to step up and make sure that, other people know that there are opportunities to be had. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things. I fell into my career. I shouldn't say I fell into my career because I think all things are destined from the Most High. But, it was one of those things where my career started off and, I didn't have a lot of times in the video industry. It's who you know, not what you know. I knew a lot. Came out of school, had all this knowledge and everything else like that, was applying for jobs and things of that nature. Didn't get a look, not one single look. But once I finally got into the door, I was able to flourish in my career. And, it's blossomed since then, since, way back in the early 2000s. And I'm still a lot of times the 101 in the room, and it's really sad to see, and it's one of those things where I was just talking to, I texted a friend of mine the other day who was in the profession when I was back up living in Michigan. And he and I connected because we got to a video shoot and we had never met. We got to a video shoot and he was the only other black person. And kind of like Tony said, we looked at each other, it was like, we gave each other the nod. It was a nod. It was a nod. So, it was just one of those things. It's like, and we are best of friends to this day. So it's just one of those, it's just crazy to think how that one little small connection, because we were, two black guys on the shoot, we connected. Whereas, had we been in a collective of, multiple, African-American individuals or just other races of people within that industry, we might have never connected. Right. But because we were those two individuals, we saw each other, we connected, and it's just flourished ever since. It's just crazy to think about how one little small spark can just grow into something, even more major.
Because you understand the isolation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. So
Absolutely.
Because you understand the isolation, and now you have that mutual common ground.
Yeah.
That's where.
Yeah.
What's crazy though, Jay? The fact that you just said something that all of us immediately related to, the nod.
The nod. Oh, yeah.
The
absolutely.
nod.
Absolutely.
How many times in my career have I been somewhere and there's one other African American and we look at each other, we lock eyes, and we give each other the nod.
It's the nod, absolutely.
It's just like this acknowledgement that I see you, I'm with you, I know where you are because I'm there too, right?
Absolutely.
And just for that moment, you have a little bit of comfort, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not by myself.
That
Yeah.
connection, the isolation.
Except when the nod's not returned. It's like, oh,
Right, yeah, exactly. You was like,
okay.
See, and now when the nod isn't returned, it's like, man, you just set the whole culture back. But no, Roderick and I, we always, because we walk up and down these hallways sometimes, we always have the nod. So it's always, myself and Roderick nod each other all the time. So it's just one of those crazy things but it's just a cultural thing. We have that. I think Renita said it best. I think we, just have that connection, that bond, that, we're not by ourselves. Yeah.
But think about it. How crazy is it that, as I'm sitting here and I'm reflecting, how many times in my career, heck, I can probably think of last week where I go somewhere that's a professional event and I'm the only black person.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I went to a conference in December of last year in Germany, a conference with 2,000 people. And I was one of two African American. The other one, he came with me too.
Wow.
So if we weren't there, there would be no African Americans.
Yeah.
And what the really cool part is, I'm so used to it. I roll. Like,
Yeah.
even if I was the only one, right? You're so used to it now. You know how to just kind of just work with it. But you are disappointed. You're like, damn.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
How does a 2,000 person conference not have more black people?
Right.
Right? So now it's up to us to figure out how to work that.
Yeah. One, a shocking revelation, Tony, that you know were in Germany at a conference with just you and one other gentleman that you knew and took with you. How do we build to make that to have people come into this organization? I mean, we are multifaceted. We got IT, we got sourcing, we got communications, we have engineering. What do we do to increase that pipeline? And not even that. Our tower climbers, everybody in the field. Ericsson is one of those, companies that has not just one facet to it. We're very multifaceted, and the opportunities that we can, give individuals. How do we go about, building those relationships?
If you guys don't mind, let me jump on one key thing that we're doing here through EAAA and also in conjunction with Ericsson. We have partnered with a company called Melville Family Foundation.
Fantastic organization.
And Melville is working with the school systems in the underserved. They partnered with a school system called Uplift, which is a public charter school system. And what that's enabled us to do is bring EAAA, us, into the school system to do things like robotics camps and bring the kids into Ericsson's campus, right, with the mindset of teaching them about STEM, right, giving them the art of the possible, things that they never even considered that was possible in their careers. And for that, we've now established some scholarships. We gave 2 away last year. We gave 3 away this year. We'll give 4 next year. And the goal and the hope is to take those kids, walk with them through college, through their 4 years of university, and then slingshot them back into employment at Ericsson. Also giving them internships during the summer. So while those are small steps in trying to build a gap, fill that gap, I think those are really great steps. And then even bringing education about STEM and robotics and what the things that Ericsson does to these schools, I think are all really positive steps in moving the needle forward.
Absolutely.
I think if I can build off that, one of the key call outs with working with an organization like Melville Family Foundation is the fact that we're targeting the youth when they're even earlier than high school, because now the data is showing that decisions to enter tech, they start at around middle school age. And so the earlier that we can get immersed in the youth lives and their experiences and give them more exposure to technology, and even beyond that, this idea of Black and brown faces in technology, right?
Yeah.
And let them know that you can do this too. If I can do it, you can do it. I think that will help us build that strong pipeline. However, even beyond that, when we think about it on a kind of a macro level outside of the ERG, I think there's certain practices that companies can take to increase more diversity in their company, whether it's more inclusive language on job descriptions or making sure that you have diverse hiring managers. There's just these different little low-hanging fruits that we can implement to create big change. Because I think a lot of the times when we talk about, how can we invite more people in and create more spaces for people who look like us, a lot of the times that work falls on Black and brown people instead of the corporations and the systems in power that really have the ability to influence and dictate that change. One thing I think Ericsson has done a really great job since 2020 is that they're starting to make those investments, whether it's with NGOs like Melville Family Foundation, or it's by hiring or creating the diversity and inclusion team who now has an emphasis and a focus on that and making it a bit more strategic and embedded in how we operate day to day as a company. I think from a systemic level that we've kind of started moving towards the right strides as a company overall. And I think even on the local ERG level that we've done some work as well, trying to hit the youth to create more inclusion to bring them in. But then, sorry, I just have so much.
No, absolutely.
Another thing I would add is
this is all useful information. Yeah.
Another thing I'd kind of ask us to explore is just when we look at diversity beyond certain job stages, right? So when we think about it from a ecosystem perspective, where are our Black employees sitting? How are they being incentivized? What are we doing to motivate them to stay? How are they feeling? I think there's an opportunity for us to explore a little bit more deeply, collect a little bit more data, identify where we might have opportunities to increase representation in our hiring practices or even in certain leadership positions, so that it's not one of one or one of few, but that we can begin to create one of many.
That's good.
Roger, I want to ask you a question. Just in talking about engineering, and Tamala brought up being in middle school age. When did you start to take a interest in becoming an engineer?
Yeah, so my dad works a lot with computers and everything like that. So that's kind of how I got introduced. And I don't think I was really good at anything else or interested in anything else. But, you know,
Yeah.
but touching computers and just playing around and everything like that. And then I got to college, and honestly, I was kind of lost in which direction to go to as far as what industry and what specific. Because I graduated with electrical engineering, and it's so broad. You can go anywhere.
Sure.
But I was blessed to have a black woman as a professor for one of my RF classes. So she got me introduced into sort of the telecom world, and she kind of took me under her wing my senior year, and I did some research with her, and we even went to UCLA for some research stuff. So I'm really happy that, I got involved with her and everything like that. And that's why it really is important to see someone else
Absolutely.
that looks like you in your space. Because without that, I wouldn't know, where I'd be at. I really want to focus on just giving back also to my community because of that impact it's had on me.
Yeah.
I have 2 younger brothers. They're also doing engineering.
Okay.
So it's like I gotta set that example for them also, and it's a really important topic.
Yeah. Where,
honestly.
if you don't mind me asking, where are your younger brothers as far as in their education? Where are they now?
Yeah. So one is a senior at UTD. He's doing biomedical engineering.
Okay.
And the other one's a senior in high school. So
Nice.
he's thinking of going to like computer science and doing that.
Excellent.
So yeah, for me personally, I have to set that standard for them.
Yeah.
Representation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We touched on something, giving back.
Yeah, representation.
And giving
Absolutely.
back is something that, admittedly, I will tell you, I was kind of in a I would call it in a boxer, right? Because you're so focused on building your career, right? And you're so focused on making sure you don't damage your career, right? So you're climbing that corporate ladder, you're looking for that peak, right? And you're very selfish. I was very selfish. I was just thinking about, I got a family, I got kids, I got to make sure we establish some lifestyle, and you want to make sure you don't impact that. But it takes me now at this stage of my career to realize I need to do something different. I need to give back, right? I need to find opportunities for kids who don't have a parent like your dad or like mine or my parents that were showing them what's possible, right? And all these kids they see the entertainers and the athletes, right? And that's what they aspire to, either being an entertainer or an athlete, right? And for the most part, they don't see black professionals, right? Or they don't have enough opportunity to see black professionals. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're an African American, it doesn't matter if you're a leader or not, consider where you are in your career and what can you do to give back. What one life that you might be able to touch on, that you could share your experience and give that kid a vision of a future that they never thought of possible.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think if it wasn't for, like you said, my dad and my family and having that support, I'm not sure I would have made it to where I am today. So I feel now I'm obligated. I'm obligated to go back out and give back. And when you do it, there's no joy greater than I can even imagine, that you see that you've touched on someone's life and you're making an impact on them. That's the greatest reward you can ever ask for.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, give back.
Yeah, and I want to shout out to Dr. Henderson.
Dr. Henderson, I like it.
She's the professor that got me in here.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect.
definitely.
I think that was a great way to, because I think this conversation could go on for another hour if we wanted it to. What Tony just said is a great way to close this out. But it wouldn't feel right to not let anybody else have any closing remarks. If you have any thoughts, any words of wisdom that you might want to impart upon our audience, feel free to share.
No, I think it just goes back to representation, right? It really does matter. So I think it kind of ties in with giving back, and also kind of ties in with what Roderick said. When you're starting out here and you're starting to think about what you want to be when you get to this level, if you don't have someone that's giving back, and coming down to where you are and mentoring you and grooming you and growing you and letting you know that regardless of your race, your ethnicity, or any of the barriers that have been placed on us that are out of our control, you too can aspire. Right, and then just kind of taking their hand and molding them and grooming them and leading the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
My closing remarks are, it might seem like, you know, the world is against you and, you know, there's other factors at play. But I think if you really just focus on producing and making sure that you show results and show that, you know, you're up to the task of anything that you're doing, that someone will see you and you'll be rewarded for that. So, yeah.
I think my closing remarks would just be take up space. Don't be afraid to be different. Deliver value. And if you have an opportunity to lift while you climb, lift while you climb. You don't have to be a senior executive in order to give back or to help the next generation of leaders. So it's important that you lift while you climb.
I think all those closing remarks were fantastic. I said this at the close of our first podcast that, you know, the panelists and I had never sat down to have a conversation. I think Tony and I probably had the most interaction within the last couple of years, but, you know, and Renita and I have kind of crossed paths before, you know, walking throughout the hallways, but for the 4 or 5 of us to have a conversation where normally we wouldn't, I think has been, it's brought some enlightenment to me, and I can't thank you all enough for joining, you know, this podcast to close out African American Black History Month, I should say, and the EAAA. I think it has been these podcasts, I think, will touch so many people. I've already gotten some tremendous response on the first podcast that we got posted. It's only been posted for less than a day. Wow. So, you know, thank you all again for coming out to participate in this. I might have to make this a 2-parter because we talked for quite a bit, so I might have to make this one a 2-parter. Yeah. So, you know, this is a great conversation. Hopefully we can continue talks like this. You know, it doesn't have to just be for African American or Black History Month or anything like that. I think that this is something that, you know, needs to be said and needs to be heard, you know, and from multiple different, you know, ERG groups. It could be our Latinos Plus. It could be our veterans. It can be, you know, whoever wants to have something to, you know, put to the forefront. Mm-hmm. But for us and our representation for, you know, Black History Month and us being African Americans, and we all look different. We all have different shades. We all have different perspectives. We all have different thought processes. It's good to come together and as a collective to get those thought processes and those, you know, ideas across. So again, thank you all for joining me on this podcast. You know, again, we will post this to social media and various other, you know, formats. Please feel free to add comments, questions, concerns when we're going to do it again. You know, if this is something you all want to see, let us know. But until the next time, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.